And I got to say, a big weekend, I think, here and around the world with news and events happening. And I'm not quite too sure where to start this morning, but I think the best place to start is very close to home, across the ditch in Sydney, in Bondi Junction at the Westfield shopping mall, where an absolutely appalling, horrific crime unfolded over the weekend. A 40-year-old man from Queensland, a man I think originally from Malta, got a knife and attacked and stabbed and killed 6 people, 5 women and a man, many others in hospital seriously injured, before being confronted and killed by a Australian police inspector, a woman who arrived 20 minutes after the terror began. And as is so often the case these days, of course, there was phone footage of the actual attack itself, which was all over social media, and a storm of speculation about what is an horrendous crime. And we react so quickly, we speculate so quickly these days, instead of just taking a moment and thinking of all those who lost their lives and their families and loved ones. Some of them were tourists, there were mothers, babies were attacked, just awful. But of course, in the way of the world, rather than stop and just feel the grief, feel the emotion of a tragedy and a tragic crime like that, almost immediately social media went into overdrive. First, he was a Muslim, so it was a reason to hate Muslims. First, he was some sort of Muslim, or he looked like a Muslim. He didn't at all. He was wearing a Australian, was it a league or a rugby jersey? League jersey. And then that Kangaroos jersey, I think it was. And then suddenly his name was Ben Cohen. He was Jewish. And it was all the evil Zionists, and it was near a mosque or it was near a temple. And, of course, all of it was complete and utter BS. He was a man known to police, a 40-year-old who'd recently moved to Sydney from Queensland, seemed to have a record of misogyny and violence or offending against women. And he had a knife, and he did something terrible, as terrible as you can do. And I was almost ashamed to see the way this thing unfolded on social media, and I too fought an urge to say something, to put it into the context of something else that was happening in the world, and you can't, can you? You can just say what an absolutely tragic series of events, and you can just hope and pray for those who are affected by a terrible, terrible crime. And of course now the question, is he a terrorist or is he a mentally unwell man? I'll tell you what I did think. I did think that the week before last, I reported to police a man who acted violently towards me in the street, and he was arrested and taken into custody, bailed. I saw him out on Manor Street the other day, and I thought of the number of times I myself or people I know walk through the centre of the city that I know and past shops with people who look and act incredibly mentally unwell and may be armed and may have a knife. And I thought, there, but for the grace of God, go I or any number of people I know in this country who are at risk from people who are clearly mentally unstable and aggressive, who are left to roam our streets, and particularly around shops and shopping malls, because they want money, and that is where people congregate. So whilst we let Australia grieve and those directly affected by the Bondi Junction tragedy grieve and come to terms with their loss, I do think we can sit there and ask some questions about whether or not we are doing enough to keep the mad nutters, and I'm not going to be nice and politically correct about it, to keep them off our streets and stop them threatening us. And as I said, in the past 2 weeks, I've taken action against someone who threatened to assault me. Not a nice person, and back on the street in just a few days in exactly the same spot. Gave me a wide berth because he has to as part of his bail conditions. So I just say sorry for Australia. And gosh, what a prime example too of how we rush to judgment and rush to label someone as a Muslim or a Jew or indeed a terrorist when they were none of those things. None of those things at all. So to our Aussie mates, hang in there and hang tough.